Hello and welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. Let's get started and look into our daily quiz. Let's look into the first question. With respect to Duchenne muscular dystrophy, which of the following statements are correct? It is a genetic disorder characterized by progressive muscle degeneration and weakness. Duchenne is caused by a change in the dystrophy gene. It primarily affects females. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is 1 and 2 only. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to Duchenne muscular dystrophy. Let us try and understand what are these statements. When you look into the first statement, it is a genetic disorder characterized by progressive muscle degeneration and weakness. When we look at Duchenne muscular dystrophy, this happens to be a genetic disorder, which basically means it is passed on from the parents and is also characterized by progressive loss of the muscle. So the muscle that we have in the leg will weaken over a period of time, and they might also fall as well. They might not be able to walk, and most of them are also stuck to the wheelchairs as well. So basically Duchenne muscular dystrophy is about muscle weakness. When you look into the second statement, Duchenne is caused by a change in the dystrophin gene. We have one of the genes and the protein called as the dystrophin. If it is not produced enough, that is what is going to lead to Duchenne muscular dystrophy. And third statement is wrong. That is because it primarily affects the males and not the females. When we look at Duchenne, it is caused by a change in the dystrophin gene. Without dystrophin, muscles are not able to function. They would not be able to repair, and this dystrophin gene is found on the X chromosome. So it basically affects the males while the females are typically the carriers. If we look into Duchenne muscular dystrophy, it refers to a group of inherited progressive muscle disorders. Degeneration of muscle fibers occurs without morphological change. What are the issues associated with it? Muscle weakness occurs from proximal to distal and usually present when the boy begins to walk. At later stages, cardiopulmonary system can also be affected. There can be spinal deformities as well. This can occur due to poor posturing from the muscle weakness. It can lead to pseudo hypertrophy of the calf, pain in the calves with activities. These are some of the features of Duchenne muscular dystrophy. This happens to be one of the rare disease. Now let's look into the next practice question. An underwater device that detects and records ocean sounds from all directions is anemometer, hydrometer, hydrophone, hygrometer. The answer to this is hydrophone. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to hydrophone, which is why we have taken this practice question. What is this hydrophone? Basically, this happens to be one of the underwater device. What exactly happens? Generally, when we speak about the aquatic ecosystem, most of the people may assume that the underwater is basically silent, but it is not so. When it comes to underwater, it has its own share of sounds that are produced under the water. In fact, numerous marine organisms also use the sound basically for the communication, reproduction, and also to seek the prey as well. So how do we identify how much noise or how much sound is present in the underwater system? To understand this, what we have is one of the apparatus basically called as the hydrophone. So hydrophone is as shown in the image. This will be put on the bed of the particular river, or it can be ocean, so on and so forth. So hydrophone is a water microphone that is basically designed to monitor the underwater noise or the sound. A typical hydrophone basically works by converting the sound wave into an electric voltage by detecting the changes in the pressure in the surrounding environment. A hydrophone detects all the acoustic signals under the water. What are the applications of the hydrophone? When we speak about hydrophone, it is used for environmental monitoring, it is used for underwater exploration, it is used for deep ocean operation, and at the same time, hydrophones can also be employed for tracking the patterns of the micro earthquakes as well as underground volcanic activity as well. These are some of the applications of the hydrophone, and we also have other apparatus as well. For example, we have barometer, which is used to measure atmospheric pressure. It is also known as Torricelli's tube after Torricelli, who invented the instrument. Then we have wind vane or weathercock. This happens to be an instrument for observing the direction of the wind. We have anemometer. An anemometer is a device used to measure wind speed. It helps us how fast wind is moving at a given time. Then we have hydrometer. It measures the relative density of the specific gravity of liquids, which is the ratio of density of liquid to the ratio of water density. And as part of the assignment, you have to put on the comment section, what is this hygrometer? What is the hygrometer is what you have to put on the comment section. So what is the impact of the underwater noise? So this article currently goes on to say that we have large number of ships. We also have human activities, anthropogenic induced factors which create a lot of noise in the underwater ecosystem. Since it is creating a lot of noise, this could become a major chaos and problematic area for the underwater ecosystem. Basically, the underwater noise, which is because of the anthropogenic induced system, it can interfere with key functions of the marine mammals as well as the aquatic ecosystems. This can result in hearing sensitivity. This can result in masking the acoustic signals. They would not be able to have proper behavioral responses because there is interference by the noise, and at the same time it can also lead to psychological stress as well. So continuous shipping movement is identified to be a major contributor to the increase in the global ocean noise level, and the sound that radiates from ships on a long-term basis affects them and results in internal injuries, loss of hearing ability, change in behavioral responses, masking and stress. These are acute and chronic noise categories in the emissions. So how is that this can be corrected? There is need to develop green ports. Since ocean noise levels are increasing at 0.55 dB per year, regulations are needed to reduce it by at least 3 dB in the next 5 years. Speed of ships should be less than 5 knots up to port limits, and rerouting of ship lanes away from foraging region of the marine species is also recommended. These are some of the recommendations that we have to follow to reduce the ocean noise. Now let's look into the next practice question. Which of the following statements is correct with respect to rhododendrons? Rhododendrons are indicator species as far as climate change is concerned. It is the state tree of Uttarakhand. Rhododendrons are evergreen, but some are deciduous. Which of the statements are correct? The answer to this is 1, 2, and 3. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to rhododendrons. Let us try and understand what are these statements. When you look into the first statement, it reads, rhododendrons are indicator species as far as climate change is concerned. What do we understand by this? Generally, when you consider the flowering season of rhododendrons, when does it start? It starts in the month of March and it continues up to the month of May. So this basically means the flowering season of rhododendron is between March to the May. But what is happening of late? What we see is these flowers are blossoming even before March. They're blossoming in the month of January. What does it indicate? When you look at the period of March up until May, what you have is a warm temperature. Rhododendrons basically needs a temperature of about 15 degrees Celsius and more than that as well. And during March and May, what we have is required amount of temperature as well as the warmth. Ideally, during January it should have been cold, but now because of the climate change introduced factors, January is also becoming warm, which means that the blossoming of the flowers is taking place during January, which is reflecting the warmth nature. It is also reflecting the climate change as well. Ideally, it should have blossomed between the period of March and May. Now it is blossoming in January, which means temperatures are increasing even during the period of January. So the first statement is right, that rhododendrons are indicator species. Indicator species of what? Of climate change, because there is more warmth during January and as a result there is blossoming that is taking place. So the first statement is right. When you look into the second statement, it is the state tree of Uttarakhand. This statement is right. When we speak about rhododendrons, this happens to be a small evergreen tree and it is locally known as Buranj in Uttarakhand. Remember, there is a word called as Buranj and this is used for rhododendrons in Uttarakhand. This happens to be a large genus of flowering plant and is usually found in the eastern Himalayas, western Himalayas and also Nilgiris as well. They can be either evergreen and some are also deciduous as well. So all the three statements that are given here are right. When we look into these rhododendrons, there is something called as the Fool Sankranti. What is this Fool Sankranti? This is basically the blooming of the flower. When does it happen? It happens usually in the month of March up until May. So this blooming of the flowers is celebrated in Uttarakhand as what is called as Fool Sankranti. What are the uses of rhododendrons other than the ornamental value? They are used in packaging wood crafts, fragrance and religious use. Rhododendrons also used in local medicines against cold, coughs and chronic bronchitis and diarrhea. And the petals of arboretum are widely used for making juice, jams and jelly. These are some of the advantages or the uses of rhododendron. However, there are also threats to these trees and plants as well. They are routinely cut for firewood by the local people. There are forest fires that also take place as well. This is threatening the survival of the species. Now let's look into the next practice question. Consider the following statements with respect to Aubrite meteorites. They are coarse-grained igneous rocks formed under extremely reducing conditions or by little or no free oxygen. They contain a variety of exotic minerals not found on Earth. Which of the following statements are correct? The answer to this is both. Why have we taken this practice question? Because this article on the Hindu makes a reference to Aubrite meteorite. So remember, you might also get a question. Aubrite was recently in news. What is it? So Aubrite happens to be a meteorite. Remember this. First, we have to understand the difference between a meteor, a meteorite and a meteoroid. When we speak about meteoroid, what is a meteoroid? This happens to be a rocky, or you can also consider it as an iron debris that is floating in the space, ranging in size from a grain or it can be as big as a sand to a boulder. So a meteoroid is nothing but a rocky substance or a debris that is present in the space. When this meteoroid enters into the Earth's atmosphere, that is what is called as meteor. So a meteoroid which is in space enters the Earth's atmosphere. So as and when it enters the Earth's atmosphere, it becomes what is called as meteor, and a portion of this meteoroid that survives falls on the Earth is what is called as the meteoroid. So a meteoroid is present in the space. A meteor enters the Earth's atmosphere and it burns and it also creates that blazing flame as well. And when it falls on the Earth, and that rock is what is called as the meteorite. Recently, the pieces of meteorite fell in two villages that have been dubbed as the Deodar meteorite. So remember, the Deodar meteorite, which is nothing but the meteoroid which had fallen on Earth, was recently found in Gujarat. This can be very important from the preliminary examination point of view. Now, if we look into the statements, what are these Aubrite meteorites? Yes, they are coarse-grained igneous rocks formed under extremely reducing conditions or by little or no oxygen, and they contain a variety of exotic minerals which are not found on Earth. Both the statements are right. Now let's discuss about a question from yesterday's daily quiz. Yesterday we had given you a second question saying that Garuda is between India and Indonesia. We did miss a word. It is not Garuda, but instead it is Garuda Shakti. So remember, Garuda Shakti is between India and Indonesia. So it is all four pairs which are correctly matched. Now let's look into the next practice question. North Atlantic Cooperation Council is the name of the new organization which has replaced the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. The United States of America and the United Kingdom became the members of NATO when it was formed in the year 1949. Which of the statements given above are correct? The answer to this is 2 only. This happens to be a previous year question from the year 2007. Now let's look into the fact of the day. The fact of the day for today's discussion is African Union. Let us try and understand what is this body all about. African Union happens to be a continental body that consists of as many as 55 states, all belonging to the African continent. The African Union was launched as a successor to the Organization of the African Unity, which was in the year 2002. So this happens to be a successor union or a body that was a successor to the Organization of the African Unity. The AU's secretariat, which happens to be the African Union Commission, is based in Addis Ababa. This can also be important from the preliminary examination point of view. What are the objectives of the African Union? Achieving greater unity, solidarity among the African countries and the people, defending the territorial integrity, sovereignty and independence of 55 member states, accelerating the political as well as socio-economic integrity of African continent, promote and defend African common positions on interest to the continent and its people, encouraging international cooperation and promoting peace, security and stability, promoting popular participation and governance of the continent, including democratic principles and institutions, development and promotion of common policies related to trade, defense and foreign relations, invite, encourage full participation of the African diaspora, protect human rights in accordance with the African Charter, to provide sustainable development of the continent at social, economic and cultural levels, development of the continent through the advancement in the field of science and technology. These are some of the objectives with respect to the African Union. However, there are some concerns with respect to the functioning of the African Union. The African Union wanted to be democratic. African Union also wanted to bring dignity. They also wanted to address poverty and hunger in Africa, but most of these issues is yet not addressed. They wanted to establish democracy, but there are many authoritarian regimes when it comes to Africa. They wanted to make sure that there are terrorist free lands, but there are many terrorist organizations in Africa as well. Some of these terrorist organizations have also captured power, let's say in Somalia, so on and so forth. So what they wanted to do was decolonize themselves, bring themselves out of underdevelopment, bring an end to terrorism, but that has not stopped despite the presence of the African Union. And some of the important pointers from the preliminary examination point of view, we have the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, which handles issues related to human rights. We have the AU Commission on International Law, AU Advisory Board on Corruption, which handles the legal and judicial matters of the states. Then we have the Executive Council, which handles foreign trade, social security, food, agriculture and communication. Permanent Representative Committee manages the Executive Council, Peace and Security Council, facilitating a timely and effective response to any conflict and crisis in Africa, and African Union Commission, which is responsible for the administration of African Union. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this topic. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.